My next guest had it all, lost it all, and actually found it all again in not so much of a conventional way of finding it all again.
Right.
Geneen Roth, thank you for joining us today. As I was talking earlier, you are absolutely one of my favorite authors. You have a new book out, Lost and Found. I loved your previous book, Women, Food, and God. It was on the New York Times Bestsellers for over 35 weeks, so
Yes.
Clearly a lot of women and a lot of men out there really found it helpful.
Yeah.
But this book, as I'm reading your first chapter, Geneen, I was absolutely shocked. You had me in that moment. You start your chapter with your friend Taj calls you and says you need to sit down.
Yes, she tells me that we've lost all of our money because our brilliant financial advisor,
Your guru.
our guru is in handcuffs, Bernie Madoff, and so in that moment it was devastating, just horrifying and devastating. And
your husband was out of the country,
Yes.
traveling in a place that you had a hard time getting a hold of him to tell him.
That's right. And I know, he says now we took the express elevator down to the bottom.
Yeah.
In one fell swoop, but
Right.
so many people are experiencing that kind of loss and fear in this current economic meltdown. So I really know what that feels like, and I know it's possible to find your way through that.
Sure.
Yes.
That moment for me, when I read that, because I've read several of your books, that moment for me, you've shared so much. You've become really transparent about your issues with food, compulsive eating, restrictive eating. You've lost and gained over 1,000 pounds through the years.
Yes.
So I feel like I know you on that level.
Yes.
But that moment for me, I thought that must have been a true test for Geneen to say, am I going to turn to food right now and numb out and
Yes.
not feel this? Did you use food in that moment?
No, I didn't, because as I write about and teach about and have worked through myself, once you deal with or look at, acknowledge and name the reasons why you turn to food or money, because both of these things we use for emotional reasons, and that's the connection right there. Mm-hmm. We spend the way we eat and we eat the way we spend, and I'll talk about that in a second. But no, I didn't turn to food. What I had to do was look and see what wasn't lost and bring myself back by focusing on what I still had instead of what I had lost. Because if I had just kept focusing on what I had lost, I would have gone crazy. It was 30 years.
Did you have to grieve it for months?
Yes.
I would think you would have to grieve that of, oh my gosh, like what if I hadn't invested it all with him? Why didn't I diversify? Why?
If you start going in that woulda, coulda, shoulda direction, you'll drive yourself nuts. Sure. And so the way to deal with this for me and for many of my students is to start focusing on after the grief. And I mean, there's going to be, yes, a period of grief and anger and shock and blame and regret and shame and horrible fear, but then it's bringing yourself back to things like the fact that I could still hold my husband's hand, the fact that I could still watch my dog, the fact that I could still drink tea out of a teacup, the fact that I could still take a hot shower, that I had a roof over my head, at least for that day. I didn't know if I was going to have it the next week or the week after that, but that day, those very concrete things that our life depends on.
That you take for granted, basically, every day.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly. We miss those, and yet they're so important. So that was the first thing I did. And then I started looking at food and money, and boy, was I shocked.
The connection.
The connection, the dieting and binging, the budgeting or restricting and splurging, the rationalizing about food. Broken cookies don't count because when the cookies break, the calories.
I can so relate to that, If I eat the rest of my son's grilled cheese, it doesn't really count because he already took a bite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we do that around money too. If I can amortize it over 30 years and it only costs 2 cents a day, I can't afford not to buy it. That kind of thing. But the feeling constantly that we don't have enough of either.
We don't have enough of either. So you say diets don't work. And this was music to my ears. Budgets don't work.
Well, when they're based on forced deprivation, guilt, fear, punishment, and shame, no change is ever going to work. We've really got to first acknowledge that we're doing this for an emotional reason. If we're trying to eat or buy that iPad or that new it thing because we want comfort, instant reassurance. I mean, and how many people have said, oh, I can't believe I ate that piece of cake. I can't believe I bought that thing. It didn't do what I thought it was going to do. So we've got to recognize where there's an emotional haze we get into, and it doesn't help us. It doesn't solve anything. Once you realize that, then you can start looking a little bit more objectively at, first of all, what does bring you true comfort, and secondly, what do I want to spend my money on?
Do you find that most people are really fearful of going inside and looking at that? I mean, it's so much easier to use food, wine, money, whatever it is, to fill that void, I would think.
Yes, because we're afraid somehow. We're walking around in a haze, and I call it a financial fog, or a trance of deprivation with both food and money. And we're afraid that if we really look, if we really see what we're eating or spending for, then somehow it will be too overwhelming, or we'll never get that need met, or we'll dissolve in tears, we'll never get off the bed. So just better to keep it over here, but it's never better. Because once you acknowledge it, you see, oh, that's all it is. It's not that bad.
Is it truly a quick fix like this? I mean, it sounds like it would be so easy to just transform your thinking and look within as opposed to try to fill from without.
Well, the hard part about this is really convincing people it's okay to look inside, to be interested in what's prompting them. It's not a quick fix in that way, but what I say is the process is the goal. So the second you start realizing, I'm eating to bring myself comfort, or I'm buying this new it gadget to make myself feel better. Somebody said to me the other day, I've got to have that iPad. It's going to make the emptiness go away. And and I said to him, how many things have you bought like that didn't make the emptiness go away?
Yeah, we have to go to break, but when we come back, I'd love for you to share your story about you have 2 pairs of glasses, you go into a store, and you have to have this extra pair of glasses. They were $1,000, right?
$1,000. That was after we lost all of our money.
After you lost all the money. We'll tell you the story right when we get back. Geneen Roth joins us, Lost and Found. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. Joining me right now is Geneen Roth. Before we went to break, I was asking her about her experience with going in to buy sunglasses, or I'm sorry, just regular glasses, I believe, after you lost $1 million, 30 years of life savings in the Ponzi scheme with Bernie Madoff.
Yes. What I did is not so different than what many people do around binging. There's something comes over us and we feel like we have to have it. And so I was glued on getting these glasses, and then I didn't get them in the end, although I just gave away the punchline. One of the best stories in Lost and Found.
It truly is. I loved it.
It's a rollicking, riveting read, I know, because so many people have told me about that. But what came over me was the need to binge. And that's what is involved in this relationship with money and with food, which I really talk about in this book, is the similarity between them. We've got to have it, we have to have it, I have to eat it, I have to buy it. Just nothing else exists but that thing. And then I started coming back to my senses, and when you start realizing that, oh, I'm using this to fill something that is never going to be filled by the thing I'm using, then the situation changes.
So enough truly is never enough if you're using something materially or food to fill the void.
You can never get enough of what you don't really want. Yeah.
Advertisers don't tell us that.
Yeah, no, they don't.
No.
They don't. But everybody in this moment has many enoughs. They have many things in this very second that they could list, at least 5 things that they could list that aren't wrong in their lives, that they have enough of. And that's where you start. And then the other part is becoming interested in the ways that we use money and we use food. I think we're feeling so much fear and loss right now around money, and so we don't want to think about it. But actually thinking about it will help us because we'll get to see what we do have.
Sure. And as a nation, it's similar to what you lost with Bernie Madoff. As a nation, we're in a recession.
Yes.
People are unemployed. People are losing money. So what can we use from your book and your experience to get through this in our own lives?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing is to realize that we have an emotional relationship with money. And so it's not the way we think it is. We have to realize we're using it for things it can never be used for. To acknowledge that and to become interested in that, and to get those needs met another way. I think the second thing is to see what we have enough of in our lives right now. That doesn't have to do with money, but those are the things on which our lives depend. That's the second thing. The third thing is to break this trance of deprivation that we're in, and to see that we do have enough. And yet we can be more objective about how we're spending our money. So in the same way that I talk with food, are you hungry? Is this really what you want?
What you want, right.
Look at what you do have, not what you don't have. Because unless you let yourself have what you have, you're just going to keep going for more anyway.
Can I ask you, how do you feel about Bernie Madoff now?
A lot of people ask me that, and I feel sad for him. After his son killed himself and his wife isn't speaking to him, he has lost everything as well. I mean, his freedom. I don't feel angry with him. I did in the beginning, but I realized that was pretty much an unproductive route to go down because the more anger I got at him, I mean, where was that going to get me, really? I needed to look at my responsibility, how I got myself into that mess, and how I gave power away for even the smallest financial decisions to people whose language I didn't understand because I thought the world of money was too complex.
Sure. If I don't understand it, they must know more than me.
That's right. And I really am encouraging people to take that back. You know, stop saying it's too complicated. It's not too complicated. Begin to understand where your money goes because your money is your energy. You spend precious hours of your life making it, and then what happens to it? You spend it on things that you don't understand. You give it to people whose language you don't understand. Take that back. Really, really understand what happens to your own energy if you track the money that you spend, because that's yours.
Right. You know, one of the things, Geneen, in your book that I really found so endearing about you was you said basically before you lost all your money, the way your husband chewed his cereal bothered you, the fact that he wore ankle socks bothered you, and that he was an optimist, that really bothered you. But after losing it, you were able to look at those things and appreciate them about him. And it's an interesting concept.
Well, because I was looking through the lens of what don't I have? What's wrong? And I would look at the ways that my husband was wrong, not the ways that he was perfect for me. I would look at the things that were wrong with where we were living. And it was drafty and cold, and it was built as a summer house, and the plumbing didn't work. And yet,
the Joneses over there have it much better than me.
Instead of thinking, I have a roof over my head. So I was looking through eyes of emptiness. And what I say is when you look through shattered lenses, the world looks shattered, no matter what's going on.
Has this made your marriage stronger?
Much, much stronger. Yes, we're closer, we're stronger, we have different values now. We are much more careful about any money that we make and where we spend it and how we invest it. We have a little tiny, teeny, tiny, but boy, I'm careful about it now.
Yeah. I really appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much. It really is a great read. I read it in one day. Absolutely love it. Lost and Found. I'm sure it'll make its way to the top again. New York Times bestseller as your previous book, Women, Food, and God. Thank you so much, Geneen Roth, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back after the break.